We tend to see successful individuals and think they've done something amazing overnight, that there was a single turning point that transformed everything. But actually, success is never the result of a single giant leap. It's the result of hundreds of tiny, incremental steps that most people don't even notice. The true secret is not doing everything flawlessly. It's doing one tiny thing slightly better each and every day. That's the magic of the 1% mindset. When I speak of the 1% mindset, I'm speaking of a lifestyle in which you wake up each morning and ask yourself one question: what can I do today to improve? Even minimally. It may be something as simple as learning something new, enhancing a skill, adjusting a habit, or merely thinking more positively than yesterday. Because if you enhance yourself by 1% each day, the cumulative effect over the long term is truly magical. Imagine this: if you enhance yourself by 1% per day, after 1 year you won't be merely 365% better, you'll be almost 37 times better. It's the miracle of small incremental change. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it works. The issue is, most of us downplay the little things. We believe growth must be big and spectacular, but deep change is at first invisible. The seed doesn't grow overnight. It requires time, attention, and patience. If I look at my own experience, I see that my change did not occur in an instant. It wasn't the accident that transformed me. It was what I decided to learn each and every day after that moment. It was choosing to become 1% stronger, 1% smarter, 1% more thankful each day. I didn't wake up one morning with courage and wisdom. I built it incrementally, with practice, with self-reflection, with choosing growth when it would have been easier to quit. That's what the 1% mindset does for us. It teaches us that greatness is not about intensity. It's about consistency. You don't have to ascend a mountain in a single day. You just have to take one step, and then another, and then another. Each tiny step, done on repeat, becomes a rhythm, and that rhythm becomes momentum. Too many of us wait for the right time to transform. We tell ourselves, I'll get started once things calm down, or I'll start when I feel more energetic, more time available, more motivated. But the reality is, there is never a suitable time. Growth doesn't wait for the suitable person. It waits for the person who starts where they are, with what they have. The individuals who change their lives are not always the most gifted or the luckiest of all. They are the ones who simply keep showing up for themselves every day. And the magic of the 1% mentality is that it eliminates the expectation of perfection. You don't have to fix everything all at once. You don't have to be phenomenal today. You merely have to be open to getting better, to learn a little more, to try a little harder, to believe a little deeper. And those tiny increments of effort over time, they become something that can't be stopped. Consider a drop of water that falls on rock. A single drop accomplishes nothing, but day after day, drop after drop, it molds even the most obstinate surface. That's what steady learning does to the mind and the soul. It molds you, sharpens you, and reshapes you into someone you never thought you could be. The 1% mentality is not about becoming successful. It's about being a student of life. It's about preferring progress to perfection, growth to comfort, and curiosity to complacency. You have two options every day: remain as you are or become a little bit better. The distinction between who you are today and who you aspire to become is constructed in those everyday 1% choices. So don't downplay the strength of small starts. Read that single page, view that single thought, provoking video, pen that single line, make that single step. Do it not because it will transform your life overnight, but because it will transform the trajectory of your life for good. Success does not begin with a miracle. It begins with an attitude that every bit matters. So commit to grow today, even if it is only 1%, because one day you will look back and see that those small steps didn't take you anywhere. They made you someone. Knowledge is the ultimate equalizer, the bridge that spans the gap between who you are today and who you were meant to be? It doesn't matter where you're from, what you've lost, or how many times life knocked you down. Knowledge is the only thing that can't be stolen from you. It's the silent strength that enables you to overcome your situation, think outside your boundaries, and create a life that looks like your dreams, not your struggles. When I tell you, educate yourself daily, I don't mean sitting in a classroom or pursuing another degree. I mean taking your mind in the direction of something that makes you better, smarter, more aware, because education actually isn't just about schools. It's about your everyday decisions, about your curiosity, and about being willing to continue learning even when nobody sees you. I recall when my life was turned upside down, when everything that I believed I knew about myself and my destiny was broken. For a bit, I felt adrift, confused, and helpless. But then I discovered that I could still learn, I could still develop. Although my body had its boundaries, my mind did not. I started reading, listening, observing, anything that would broaden my perception of life, of individuals, of purpose. The greater the knowledge I acquired, the stronger I became. Knowledge set me free when my situation attempted to enclose me. And that's what knowledge does. It sets you free. It opens doors other people believe are shut. It builds confidence where there was once fear. When you know more, you do more. It doesn't matter what tools you have. What matters is how hungry you are to learn. Because in a world that's always evolving, the people who continue learning are the ones who continue to lead. But the thing is, knowledge isn't purely about books and facts. It's also about awareness, empathy, and understanding. It's about learning from life itself. Every individual you encounter knows something that you don't. Every experience, be it good or bad, teaches you something new if you listen. The wise don't perceive themselves as know-it-alls. They perceive themselves as eternal students. We live in a time where information is everywhere. But wisdom, that's rare. Knowledge becomes power only when you apply it, when you live it. You can read 1,000 books. But if you don't let those lessons shape your character, they remain just words on a page. True education isn't about collecting information. It's about transformation. So ask yourself, what are you learning daily? Not only about your job or your objectives, but about yourself, your routines, your feelings, your responses. Self-education implies becoming aware of who you currently are and who you are developing into. It's about observing your failures and asking, what is this attempting to instruct me? Because life is the greatest instructor, and experience is the most sincere textbook you'll ever have. And don't forget, education doesn't just better people, it improves communities. When you decide to learn, you're not only rewriting your own narrative, you're rewriting the stories of all those who admire and look up to you. You set an example of what can be done. You become a light for all who are still looking for answers in the dark. Sometimes folks are like, but I don't have access to education. To which I always reply, you have access to life. Daily life provides a lesson, if only you are open to seeing it. A conversation, a challenge, a book, an error, they are all teachers in disguise. You don't require wealth to be wise, you require curiosity. You don't require privilege to learn, you require persistence. The most successful individuals aren't the ones who had everything given to them. They're the ones who wouldn't give up learning. They're the ones who understood that regardless of what life took from them, it could never take away what they knew, what they had acquired, and what they kept pursuing. So learn something each day. Nut your brain as you nut your body. Read something that stretches your mind. Listen to someone who challenges you. Ask questions that stretch your mind. Because knowledge is the one gift that gets bigger, the one investment that never depreciates, and the one force that nobody can ever take away from you. And when you construct your life upon that basis, you find that success isn't fortune, it's learning. It's not what you know, but what you do with it, and how you use it to make the world a little bit brighter, one lesson at a time. We tend to grow up thinking education only occurs inside the building of a school, that it starts with a teacher's lecture and finishes with an exam. But life itself has a way of demonstrating that the best lessons are never scribbled on a blackboard. They're scribbled in our experiences, our missteps, our discussions, and our silent moments of introspection. Real education starts the day we learn that the moment school is over, learning doesn't end. It goes on as long as we exist. Some of the most influential teachers you will ever encounter are not in academic robes. They are life. The individuals who challenge you, the failures that humble you, the rejections that redirect you, and the struggles that test you. These are all secret teachers. Each situation has a lesson, but not everyone learns. The distinction between people who grow and people who remain stagnant is easy. The desire to learn outside of the classroom. When I reminisce about my own journey, I catch myself wondering how constricted my education was prior to life choosing to take me down a different road. Like so many, I was concentrating on books, degrees, and marks. I thought education was something you could finish. But since my accident, I have learned the deepest lesson of all, that education is not something you complete, it's something you live. I was learning every day. Patience, gratitude, perseverance. None of those were in any curriculum, but they formed the core of me today. The world beyond the school teaches you lessons no textbook can teach. It shows you how to get back up after you've fallen, how to hear with more than just your ears when words cannot suffice, and how to be beautiful with pain. It teaches empathy, something no class can ever fully describe, because it helps you experience the tales of others, to live with different eyes. It teaches you to adapt, because everything in life changes sooner or later. And it teaches courage, because when life becomes uncertain, learning becomes your anchor. You understand, the classroom teaches you something, but life teaches you transformation. And both are needed. But if you use only one, you restrict yourself. Actual growth occurs when you combine what you know with what you experience. When you no longer say, I already know this, and begin to ask, what else can this teach me? That question alone has the power to transform your entire life. Learning outside the classroom is also being humble enough to say that you do not know everything. It is simple to learn if somebody is instructing you, but actual learning occurs when you are learning for yourself, when you seek, research, and ask questions, when you observe human beings, nature, art, and the beat of life itself. That is where it occurs. It's in talking to strangers, in going to new places, in reading about something other than your own culture. The world can be your school when you let your heart open up. And sometimes life's greatest lessons are in the moments we least anticipate. An act of kindness can teach you compassion. A critical comment can teach you strength. A loss can teach you the importance of being present. The trick is to be alert enough to pay attention to what life is teaching you. Because when you recognize that all experience is a classroom, every day is a chance to learn and grow. So don't limit your learning to a syllabus or a format. Remain perpetually curious. Allow each moment, each feeling, each interaction to mold you. The universe is a much larger educator than any organization. And while a classroom may give out certificates, life gives out wisdom. Education, after all, isn't about amassing degrees. It's about broadening awareness. It's about being more compassionate, more grounded, more human. When you decide to learn from everything, the good, the bad, and the in-between, you no longer become a student of a subject, but a student of life. And that kind of learning never wavers, because one day when you look back, you'll see that the lessons that actually shaped you weren't learned in classrooms. They were learned in the still moments when life whispered, "Learn from this." Comparison is one of the simplest traps to fall into, and one of the most difficult to escape. Since childhood, we learn to measure our self-worth by others, how much ahead or behind we are. We compare our appearance, success, achievement, even our happiness. But the reality is, comparison is the robber of peace, destroyer of self-esteem, and enemy of progress. When we live every day comparing ourselves to others, we lose sight of the beauty of our own path. Comparison has you paying attention to what you don't have rather than what you do. It blinds you to your own blessings, your own improvement, your own potential. And it's not fair because you're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You're reading their chapter 20 while still writing your chapter 2. How is that ever going to be a fair comparison? What if instead of comparing, you started wondering? What if, rather than muttering, "Why am I not like them?" you wondered, "What can I learn from them?" That tiny adjustment from comparison to curiosity makes all the difference. Because curiosity fuels growth, and comparison fuels insecurity. When you look at others with curiosity, you notice inspiration, not competition. You start admiring rather than envying, and you start learning rather than resenting. When I was beginning, particularly after my accident, I would look at individuals with what appeared to be perfect lives, walking, traveling, doing things I didn't think were possible for me. And I would question, why me? Why couldn't I live that life? But over time, I got to understand that everybody is actually fighting a war I don't see. That there is a story behind every smile, a struggle behind every success. When I quit comparing their perfection to my pain and began inquiring about their perseverance, everything changed. Curiosity opens the heart, comparison closes it. To compare is to pull away from others. To be curious is to find common ground. You begin to see people as teachers, not threats. The person you meet is someone who knows something you do not, and that in itself is good reason to listen, to observe, to learn. The people you used to envy become your quiet mentors. Their strength teaches you resilience, their creativity teaches you possibility, and their courage teaches you hope. And remember, your journey is uniquely yours. No one else has walked your path, faced your exact challenges, or learned your lessons. Your pace, your story, your timeline, they all belong to you. So don't rush to keep up with anyone else. The flower doesn't compete with the one next to it. It just blooms. And when it blooms, it adds beauty to the garden in its own time. Comparison also causes us to forget how far we have come. We're so caught up peeping at what somebody else is doing that we forget to cheer our own success. You might not be where you want to be yet, but you're certainly not where you once were. Each step forward, no matter how modest, is worth celebrating. Gratitude and not comparison is what takes progress to peace. Curiosity, however, makes you humble and eager to learn. Curiosity makes jealousy motivational. When you watch someone doing something amazing, rather than thinking, "They're better than me," say, "What can I learn from their success?" Perhaps their discipline can teach you consistency. Perhaps their creativity can teach you courage. Perhaps their success can teach you that your own dreams are achievable as well. When you live with wonder, you cease viewing life as a competition and begin viewing it as a classroom. Everyone is a source of wisdom, and everything is a source of learning opportunity. You cease pursuing someone else's definition of success and begin creating your own. And so, if you find yourself scrolling through life, becoming smaller with each passing look at someone else's success, take a moment and remind yourself, you are on your own journey. Nobody can live your story the way you can. Make comparisons curiosity, envy empathy, and self-doubt self-growth. Because ultimately, success is not about outdoing everybody else. It's about being better than yesterday. And when you trade comparison for curiosity, you cease competing and begin evolving. What you feed your mind determines who you become. Just as your body needs to be fed in order to get stronger, your mind needs the proper input in order to remain healthy, focused, and inspired. Every word that you listen to, every book that you read, every thought that you have, they all become who you are. And the fact is, your mind does not only mirror your life, but it creates it. So, if you want to transform your life, you need to start with transforming what you feed to your mind. We are living in a world that is always filling us up with noise. Negativity on social media, fear in the news, others' doubt, and sometimes our own doubt. And before we know it, we begin consuming all of that. We soak it up like a sponge, and it starts to tint how we view ourselves and the world. We start thinking small, dreaming less, and expecting less. That's why it's so vital to make conscious choices about what you let into your mind. You can't create a lovely garden if you keep watering weeds. I recall when I first began rebuilding my life, there was so much about me attempting to tell me that I couldn't, that I shouldn't, that I'd come to the end of my possibilities. And for a time, I thought so, until I decided to change what I was putting into my mind. Rather than hearing voices that describe what I couldn't do, I began to listen to those that encouraged me to remember what I could do. I hung around stories of resilience, with friends who encouraged me, with books that challenged me to dream bigger, and gradually my world began to transform, not because life had become simpler, but because my attitude became firmer. Your brain is like a mirror. It only reflects what you present to it. If you give it fear, you'll be living in fear. If you give it courage, you'll begin to feel courageous. If you give it growth, you'll begin to notice improvement everywhere. The beauty of your mind is the beauty of your life. So think about it. What are you putting into your mind on a daily basis? Are you feeding it knowledge, hope, and inspiration? Or are you starving it with self-doubt and negativity? Every song you listen to, every conversation you have, every post you read, they're all ingredients that influence your mindset. Take care of your mental diet just as much as your physical diet. It's not living in denial of difficulties or acting as if everything is fine. It's about deciding to look at what makes you powerful rather than what zaps your energy. It's about putting yourself with people who remind you of your power when you've forgotten it. People who nudge you to grow. People who challenge you out of complacency, and people who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. And don't forget, nourishing your mind is not just what you put in, but what you put out. Write down your ideas. Speak truth to power. Think about your path. Each time you write, speak, or think about your path in a way that heals and uplifts, you are building mental muscle. The books you read, the things you watch, the voices you hear, they're like guides that mold you. Make them good ones. Learn from people who broaden your mind, who challenge you, who make you feel alive. Don't fill your head with trash, fill it with brilliance. Don't feed it fear, feed it faith, because one day you will be the sum of all you've given to your mind, the thoughts you've accepted, the information you've acquired, and the thoughts you've cultivated. Your external success will always reflect your internal nourishment. So protect your mind like a garden. Weed out the negative thoughts, sow seeds of inspiration, and nourish them with consistency. In time, you will find that your thoughts begin blooming as confidence, your curiosity as learning, and your effort as success. Nourish your mind on what you wish to become, for what you think you will attract, what you learn you will become, and what you believe you will bring into existence. If you would like to live a life of purpose, nourish your mind with purpose. If you would like to live a life of strength, nourish your mind with strength, because as your inner world expands, your outer world has no option but to do the same. Discipline is the bridge between dreams and reality, and in the process of learning, discipline is the key. Most individuals begin with enthusiasm. They purchase the books, create the plans, establish the goals. But few persist when the thrill is gone. That's where discipline comes in. The unobtrusive, steady dedication to continue studying, even when it becomes difficult, even when things get hectic, even when inspiration is gone. Because inspiration may initiate your journey, but discipline will keep you on the move. We tend to wait until we're ready before taking action. We tell ourselves, I'll read when I find time, or I'll begin once things ease up. Time will never ease up. Life will never stop for you to get ahead. Development is not something you find time for. It's something you make time for. It's something you carve out those 15 or 20 minutes a day to nourish your mind, process what happens to you, and push beyond your boundaries. You don't have to spend hours each day to change your life. Even small, consistent effort adds up over time. Imagine learning as exercising a muscle. If you hit the gym once a month, nothing happens. But if you work out daily, even just for a few minutes, change is not only possible but guaranteed. Your mind is no different. The more regularly you tax it, the more capable it grows. And that's what the practice of learning every day is. Exercising your mind to remain keen, curious, and receptive. There were times in my life when I wasn't feeling inspired. Times when I didn't want to read, write, think. But I discovered something strong. Discipline isn't about how you feel, it's about what you choose. And when you choose learning as a non-negotiable part of who you are, it becomes as automatic as breathing. You begin to crave growth. You begin to see lessons everywhere. The art of everyday learning isn't about accomplishing something monumental each day. It might be something as mundane as reading a single page of a book, listening to an insightful video, writing down your thoughts, or summarizing your day. The aim is progress, not perfection, because each small act of learning is a step forward, and step by step, each small effort becomes giant growth. We tend to underestimate what we can accomplish in a year and overestimate what we can accomplish in a day. Consistency is the secret. Doing a little bit a day might not feel like much at the time, but eventually it alters you. It alters the way you think, the way you speak, the way you perceive the world. It becomes who you are. You begin moving differently, speaking differently, thinking differently, because you've nourished your mind with something fresh each day. Discipline also imparts respect. Respect for time, for work, and for yourself. If you're learning every day, you're telling yourself that you matter, that your mind is worthy of the same respect and care as your body, your profession, or your relationships, that you deserve investment. And yes, it will hurt at times. Discipline always does. But the pain of discipline is so much less than the pain of regret. The days you don't want to learn are the days you need to most, because those are the days you're building your resolve, not your information. Keep in mind that success isn't created through one moment of genius. It's created through the quiet repetition of work. Each great mind, each innovator, each leader you look up to didn't become so by chance. They became so by discovering something new each and every day, no matter how insignificant. They habituated growth, not leisure. So ask yourself, what are you going to do today to grow even slightly? Maybe you'll read some pages. Maybe you'll think about a screw up. Maybe you'll have a conversation that opens your eyes. Doesn't matter how small or large the step is, as long as you make it. Because someday all those days of hard work will pay off. Someday you'll look around and see that the self-discipline you exercised each day didn't just make you smarter. It made you stronger, smarter, and more able to build the life you used to just fantasize about. The habit of daily learning is not perfection. It's persistence. It's about being present, particularly when it's uncomfortable. Because you understand that growth isn't something that happens to you. It's something you do every day. And when you commit to learning every day, you don't only get smarter, you become untamable. At times, the most difficult aspect of growing is not learning something new. It's letting go of what no longer works for you. We often carry old beliefs, fears, and patterns like heavy luggage, wondering why it's so hard to move forward. But the truth is, you can't step into a new version of yourself while holding on to the outdated lessons of your past. To evolve, you must unlearn. We exist in a culture that celebrates learning, yet we don't often discuss the value of unlearning, of releasing what holds us back. We grasp concepts that made sense in the past but now hold us back. We grasp identities that no longer fit us. We perpetuate habits that are comfortable, even if they confine us. Unlearning means boldly questioning all of that, asking yourself, is this belief still serving me to grow? Or is it keeping me safe and stuck? There was a time in my life when I thought that strength was never breaking down. That courage was about pretending your pain behind a smile. That vulnerability was weakness. I had learned these lessons in a world that taught me to stay strong, even when I was shattering. But life has this amazing way of correcting you. I came to realize that authentic strength isn't really about faking being invincible. It's about loving your cracks and still deciding to sparkle. I needed to unlearn what I believed strength was so I could learn what it really was. Unlearning is not removing the past. It's letting go of its grip on your future. It's allowing yourself permission to redefine, to success, to happiness, to worth. Perhaps you learned that success is indexed by titles or money. Perhaps you learned as a child that your voice doesn't count. Perhaps you've been told you're never enough. Those lessons may have formed you in the past, but they don't need to characterize you today. When you unlearn, you make room for new truths. You come to understand that your value isn't what you do, but who you are becoming. You see that failure does not equal defeat. It equals discovery. You know that it's not only acceptable, but necessary to change your mind, to begin again, to expand beyond what others require of you. Unlearning sets you free, free to grow without shame. But unlearning is not easy. It requires honesty. It requires you to confront your own thoughts, to challenge what feels comfortable, to question what you've always believed. It's not a one-time act. It's a lifelong process. Because as you evolve, life will keep showing you new things to release. Each phase of development requires that you release something old, an old fear, an old self, an old narrative that no longer works. And the magic of unlearning is that it creates space for wisdom. When you release limiting beliefs, you create room for empowerment. When you unlearn judgment, you find compassion. When you unlearn fear, you create space for courage. It may feel awkward, but it has to be done, because you can't pour new information into an already full cup. I remind myself frequently that just as the earth drops its leaves to create space for new growth, we too must release what is no longer serving us. You can't evolve if you are stuck holding on to who you once were. So give yourself permission to shift. Give yourself permission to outgrow old versions of yourself. Don't be afraid to disillusion the expectations no longer in your truth. Each time you learn to release something that holds you back, you move closer to the person you are supposed to be. Each time you release a mistaken belief, you take back part of your power. Growth is not always about accumulating more. Sometimes it's about the subtraction of what no longer fits. So, as you walk further along your path of learning and becoming, recall this: you are not merely a learner of knowledge, you are a learner of transformation. And transformation involves learning as well as unlearning. Don't be reluctant to let go of what no longer has a place in your future. Because when you finally release yourself from who you were, you create room for who you are to be. Knowledge is mighty, but its real power is not to be stored, it's to be released. When you know something, you don't just become more for yourself, you become more for others as well. What's lovely about education, wisdom, and experience is that they gain strength when you share them away. The more you give, the richer your knowledge gets. That's the alchemy of growth. It's infectious. All too often, we guard what we know as something to be defended. We worry that if we give away too much, we will lose our advantage or get taken for a ride. But in fact, knowledge is the opposite. The more you give, the more it grows. Each time you teach, each time you mentor, each time you speak your truth, you don't lose what you've learned, you make it stronger. You hone it, you deepen your relationship with it. When you share what you've learned, you're a light to others who are still struggling to find their way. Perhaps it's a good word to someone who's lost. Perhaps it's passing on a lesson from your errors so another person doesn't have to make the same mistake. Perhaps it's just being truthful about your journey, your struggles, your growth. We don't know how much our stories can affect others until we tell them. I've discovered that sometimes individuals do not require advice. They just need to be assured they are not solitary. By opening up and uttering, "I've been there too," you establish an empathy bridge. Your vulnerability becomes another person's strength. Your bravery emboldens them and gives them permission to be brave as well. That is how change transpires, not through perfection, but through connection. Don't need a stage or a platform to share your knowledge. It begins in small moments, in conversation, in being kind, in mentoring. Perhaps you've read something that's inspired you. Pass on the most important thing you learned to a friend. Perhaps you've found a new path to remaining disciplined. Share with someone who's having a hard time getting motivated. With every share, you give someone else a seed of growth in their life. And here's something beautiful: when you share, you learn again. Teaching others forces you to reflect, to simplify, to truly understand what you've learned. It helps you see your own growth through new eyes. Often, the act of giving becomes the very thing that reinforces your own learning. You grow not in isolation, but through connection, through community, through contribution. But sharing isn't about information, it's about energy. When you help others up, you help yourself up. When you bask in someone else's success, you maximize your own. There's a happiness that comes from giving without taking back something equal in return. A feeling of completion that no individual accomplishment can ever match. Because success that's not shared becomes empty. Growth that doesn't motivate others is never complete. At times, the world advises us to keep our own wisdom to ourselves, be quiet, concentrate on our own ascent. But picture how much lighter the world would become if we each chose to light a candle for somebody else. If we applied our experiences, our learned truths, our battles to assist others to climb a little higher. That is how collective ascension occurs, one individual electing to pass on one tale at a time. So, never diminish the power of your voice, your experience, or your wisdom. What is mundane to you could be life-altering to someone else. The book you recommend, the counsel you offer, the encouragement you provide. These are not little things. They are sparks that can set hope ablaze in other people. And don't forget, sharing doesn't make you less special. It makes you important. It makes your personal growth a ripple effect of inspiration. It makes your path a movement. When you learn something new each day and then teach others, you become a source of light in a world that feels dark too often. So, as you continue learning, don't simply grow, give, don't just seek success, spread significance. Because the true mark of daily growth isn't just how much you've learned. It's how many lives your learning has touched. Life has a beautiful way of rewarding consistency. The more you invest in your growth every day, the more your efforts begin to compound. Quietly, invisibly, but powerfully. That's the magic of lifelong learning. It doesn't arrive suddenly, but one morning you wake up and see how far you've traveled. What had previously seemed so small and negligible. A few pages read, a podcast heard, a piece of writing written, now becomes the basis of radical change. We always imagine success happens in giant leaps. The promotion, the accolades, the moment of brilliance. But actual success, the lasting kind, is constructed in small incremental steps. It's constructed in those days no one sees. The days when you decide to learn rather than scroll. The days when you challenge yourself to expand, even when it's inconvenient. Each of those instances contributes, silently molding your mind, your habits, and your future. That's the magic of compounding. All that you do day by day starts increasing in value. Imagine planting seeds. You can't see it growing right away, but down below, roots are extending, power is developing, and transformation is occurring. And then, one day, that tiny seed of effort blossoms into something remarkable, a garden of wisdom, awareness, and self-control. I've met so many people who give up too soon because they don't see instant results. They read for a week, they learn a new skill for a month. And when change doesn't come fast enough, they stop. But lifelong learners understand something different. That growth is not a race, it's a rhythm. It's not about speed, it's about endurance. The individuals who develop the most are not the ones who get everything right. They're the ones who never miss showing up. The compounding force of learning is also psychological. As you develop every day, your attitude changes. You start to view challenges as not problems to be solved, but opportunities to grow. You begin to react to life with greater wisdom, greater serenity, and greater awareness. The things you used to find hard to learn become second nature. What used to be daunting becomes accessible. That's the hidden strength of learning. It not only transforms what you know, but who you are. And here's the good news. The more you learn, the more you want to learn. Lifelong learners never arrive. They remain humble, open, and hungry. They recognize that education doesn't culminate in a degree or a certificate. It's a perpetual journey of discovery. Every conversation, every error, every experience becomes a classroom. When you approach life with that attitude, life itself becomes your ultimate teacher. As time passes, you realize how your little decisions every day built something amazing. Your current level of confidence wasn't born overnight. It was constructed through years of development. The understanding you share with other people didn't come out of one book. It came out of 1,000 small lessons. All your little steps added up to be the person you are today. And that's the 1% secret. They don't attempt to do everything at once. They simply get a little better each day. One new idea, one incremental improvement, one reflective thought. They know that greatness is not a place, but a journey, a decision to continue learning, continuing to evolve, continuing to become. So remember this. When you ever get the feeling that your efforts are too insignificant to make a difference, one drop of water, repeated enough times, can erode stone. Your consistency will always outweigh your intensity. Your growth will be slow but steady, and that is what makes it unbeatable. Ultimately, lifelong learning isn't about accumulating knowledge. It's about building wisdom. It's about becoming the best possible version of you day by day. Lesson by lesson, decision by decision. That's how everyday people do extraordinary things. Not because they were masters of everything, but because they never stopped learning. So go on feeding your mind. Keep developing your curiosity. Keep arriving at your growth. Because one day, all the small moments of learning will add up to something really extraordinary. A life of purpose, mastery, and fulfillment. And that's when you'll know the truth. Success was never about luck or talent. It was about what you decided to do with every single day.